Team Talk.
All right, I get worse every week, not better. Jeff Colson here, Junior Hockey Live. Let me bring Bloomer in, and we'll get rolling here. Practice all day. Other side, Jeff. Other side. Look at me. There we go. I practiced all day, literally all day, to get that one thing fixed, and I knew what I had to do, and it still didn't work right. How you doing, Bloomer?
Yep, I'm doing well. I've been looking at a computer screen all day long today, so my eyes are starting to bug out on me already.
I know. Can you get that mic a little closer, just a tad? And then
Will do.
there we go. That's a little better. Well, listen, everybody.
I'll just
Welcome.
put it right in front of my face.
Well, I tend to make that mistake sometimes, but people complain right away if I cover my face up. Junior Hockey Live here. Jeff Colson, Mike Bloom, the Bloomer. Talking hockey. We're talking any junior league. We're talking players. We're talking leagues. We're talking teams. We're talking coaches. And unlike our show on Monday, Monday is about how to progress through the ranks to get up to juniors and beyond. Today is just talking teams, and I'm excited. I'm very excited. And we're going to have some fun tonight because we're going to do a little playoff predictions. And Mike, you're going to take what league?
I got the USHL.
Oh, you got USHL tonight. That'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun. And I'm going to take the EHL, and I'll look at them. And what we're going to try to do over the next few weeks is we're going to try to progress through the leagues, get an idea what's going on league to league. Hey, if you got a question, use the comments. Comment to us. Let us know what's going on. Tell us where you're at. Tell us hello. Let us know what you think. If you're gonna blast us too bad, do that with a direct email or a direct a DM. But if you like what we're doing, tell us that you like us. Mike can take all the adulation that you can give him. He needs it. Me, I'm too old. I don't worry about that stuff as much anymore. Okay, so you're gonna go. First of all, you're busy all day. By chance, could you tell me what you were doing?
Well, we just got all of our Chicago camp information for our Null pre-draft camp, and got everything finalized, the date, the time, the location, and now we're going through and compiling emails and getting it out there so people know where we're having it. So for those listening, it'll be June 2nd to 4th. In the Chicagoland area, but it's actually in Hammond, Indiana, which is about 25 minutes outside of Chicago. Still a Chicago suburb.
Now, hang on. I asked you this before, and I can't remember the answer. Is that near Gary, Indiana?
It is. So if you're driving from Chicago to Michigan, you're going to go through both Gary and Hammond before you make your way into Michigan.
Gary's a very interesting place.
Home of Michael Jackson.
Yeah, home to a lot of stuff. And that answers a lot of questions about Michael Jackson, because I think there's a lot of green stuff that grows on the bottom of those lakes and rivers in that area that may not be man-made. That place is, it's the smell of the oil refinery stuff, That's what gets me when I drive through. And I don't even use the GPS. I know when I'm getting close to Gary just by the smell. Is that bad to say?
Sounds like you're talking about River Rouge.
Well, River Rouge used to be that way. They've cleaned that up quite a bit now. You know that. Hey, what the heck are you wearing for a hat? It looks like you got some kind of hunting hat on. I can't see it.
Detroit Lions, the military edition.
Oh, you're still trying to follow that team?
Of course.
I'm a lifelong Detroit fan of all sports, but I just don't even try with the Lions anymore. I just don't. If they're on, they're on. They've broken my heart so many times over the years, it's not even worth it. So, okay.
I'm all Detroit all the time.
You're getting some feedback. Frank, hey, good to see you, Frank. Appreciate you jumping on. Frank's got a message just for you, Mike. He says, lots of echo on Mike. So I'm not sure why you're getting echo there. I don't have anything I can do to control you, Mike. You can talk a little bit, see if that helps.
Hopefully
I'm
it
trying a couple
sorts
things
itself.
here.
I don't know what I can do on my end.
Let's see if that did any good for you. Try it again. Say test 1, 2, 3.
Test 1, 2, 3. Frank, let us know. Is it any better?
Frank, tell us if that helped a little bit. Anyway, we gotta. What do you want to do? You want to go with the? You want to go with the USHL first? Or you want to go with the EHL first?
Let's go with the EHL. We'll work our way up.
Work our way up. Okay. So I don't know how familiar the audience is across the board with the EHL as far where the standings is. So I will pull up the standings for us, and we'll share the standings and kind of walk through what I see. Now I think this. I think it's a pretty much a done deal on things in the EHL as far as who's going to win this. But I could be very premature on this. Let me get this up. Game Center and standings, and I'll share this with everybody. And let's go to there. Okay, there we go. EHL page, Game Center, supposed to be standings. There's the EHL. Okay, here we go. So they're 40 games into the year for the most part across the board. They've got 4 divisions. You see they've got the South, or the Central, the East, the North, and the South divisions. The Railers on top, fighting it out in the first division, and Railers are the only one that's clinched up there. In fact, they're one of the few that have clinched a playoff spot across the board, or clinched division, I should say first. Haven't clinched a playoff spot, but they've clinched their division. Going to be tough for Connecticut or HC Rhode Island to catch up, but that's kind of fun. I like to see that that the Connecticut and Rhode Island fighting it out a little bit there for second place, which is still a close race. You jump down to that East Division, still a fight for the top. Express and the Junior Rangers, with a little bit of an outside chance for the Seahawks to slip in there. They're all within reach, and if you look at winning percentages and how they play, that's not a high scoring division. So that'll be fun to see who comes up on top right now. Of course, just looking at the records and just looking at goals against, because remember, playoffs gets a lot more defensive as you go across the board. So these teams that have low goals against across the board during the season, I always give them the edge in the playoffs because they're used to keeping the score low. So I think the Express looks good coming out of the East. The North, let's move it up and look at that North. If you can't see the screen, I'll make it a little bit bigger for you. Avalanche, are in first, of course. Seacoast is right behind them with 7 points back. So they've got a little bit of a shot, but holy smokes. The Avalanche are 32-7 to Seacoast's 28-10 record. There's not that many games left. If you're going to make a run, you've got to have the Avalanche, New Hampshire Avalanche, they have to have a little bit of a slump here, and Seacoast has got to get hot real quick. So I think Avalanche are the team to beat there, but we'll see how this all plays out. South Division, you got the Junior Ducks on top. Well, they're not really on top. They're on top on the sheet, but it's really a tie in points with the 87s, New Jersey 87s. This is the one division where I think that this is interesting. I actually give the edge to the 87s because, once again, I don't look at the same things that other people look at. Well, I'm sure there's other people that do it too, but that goals against, comes into play. And I really like a team that plays defensive all year long and can still win games. So yeah, they don't score. The Ducks have got 126 goals for the year against New Jersey's 107. But you jump down and I'll put up what I'm looking at right there, and I'm over right here looking at that. I don't know if that pops up on the screen or not. But right there, I'm looking and I'm seeing, yeah, they only scored 102 goals, but they've got 24 wins with only 80 goals against. And yeah, they've got one less game played than the Ducks. But okay, throw that game in there and, give them the average goals against that they've got. They're still only going to be about 82, 83 goals. They're in really good shape to be a good defensive team in that division. In fact, if you look across the board at goals against, their 80 plays out really well in the league. So I'm going to give them my dark horse. I'm going with the 87s as a dark horse to make a run in the playoffs. Now, once again, getting out of that division is tough, though. I mean, they're not sitting in that division, and there's no give-me's there. My overall pick. What team do you think I'm going to take?
Out of the whole league?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you're a front runner, but maybe the Railers.
That's not a bad pick. If I were, just somebody that threw a dart at a wall, I might take the Railers. I'm actually going with the team with the overall points, and that's not always a good indicator. And we were a good example of that last year. You can win the President's Cup in the NHL. It doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna win things overall. But I like two things about New Hampshire, and then I'm gonna take in the third thing I like. I like New Hampshire because the goals for is incredible. They are a team that runs and guns. 172 goals for the year. There's nobody in the league anywhere near them. I think second place is 126. They throw up a ton of goals, but they're still in that running for one of the best defensive teams with only giving up 104. They're the best in their league or in their division for goals against, but they would be, they'd be third here. But you look at them; they're still in the running in every other division for being one of the top defensive teams too, which is hard to do. I've watched this team play a couple times this year, but here's what I really did: I dug into some of these teams that I played around with. Let me pull them up as an individual team. What I did was I pulled up their away games. I don't know if I'm in the right spot to go. I got to do the overall schedules. I pulled up their schedules and I sorted by the away games because I think, in my opinion, what you do on the road all year long and the habits you've built on the road are really the habits you need to win playoff games. And so I looked. Where did I do with it? Okay, this is the month of February. I looked back all through the year and just watched their season develop and how they actually handle their road games. They're a good road team. They're a real good road team. And they have some consistencies on the road as far as keeping the score low, hard to do on the road, and winning games. And sometimes they're winning games by big scores. So you look at their road performance throughout the year, hey, I think you got your winner right there. In my opinion, and this is not a league I'm an expert on. I've watched all these teams at least a couple times this year, but I have not spent a lot of time on the EHL. I don't go to live games in the EHL very often. If I'm out there and they're playing in one of the rinks that I'm scouting in, of course I'll pop over and watch them if there's a fourplex or there's something going on that is nearby. But any thoughts on that, Mike, from your part?
Well, as you were kind of walking through it, I kind of agree with you because when you look at their division, each one of those teams are over 500. So they are battle tested within their own league against other really good teams. So, going into the playoffs, it's not like, they kind of got rich off of some of the teams that, were at the bottom of the standings. All the teams within their division were all above 500. So that's good competition throughout the year.
Yeah, Stephen just made a comment that that Dansbury needs a win against the Titans. Kind of a different league, different situation. We can talk about it later, but we're going to focus on the EHL for a second, then we'll talk at the end. Now, if you got questions, don't forget, throw them up at any point. We'll jump on the questions as we get rolling. But this would be fun. I think there is parity in this league. I think you're right. You don't see a lot of people. There's nobody that's sitting on an undefeated year, and their losses include teams that are less than 500 that have beat them. So that tells you that anybody can jump up at any time. Yeah, that's what's great about this league. What I really like about the EHL is, it's not. If we compare it to the NCDC is always top heavy with 2 or 3 teams. The EHL isn't top heavy. You can't really break down the USPHL Premier Division because they have 4,013 teams. And when you have that many teams worldwide, how do you compare them? You can't because they don't play crossover with everybody. Can you imagine the USHL or USPHL Premier? Can you imagine if they had to play one crossover against everybody during the year? So they'd have to play like 120 games to get through the year just to, get all the crossover in. What a logistical mess. Yeah. I mean, I wish they did what the Tier 1 Elite does. Tier 1 Elite U18, they do a rotating showcase, in all the different zones of the United States. And you don't necessarily have to travel to LA or to Phoenix every year, but in a rotation, a U18 or a U16 team will get out there and, the other team has to come back and reciprocate the next year. They do a really good job with making sure you get coverage without having to play every team in Tier 1 Elite, and you've always got a diverse set of games. So that's always fun on that side. But hey, EHL, I'm excited about watching the end here. We'll keep updating as we go on this year and looking at it. I know that the other thing I liked about the Avalanche, and I know I'm just picking on one team, but I liked them. I liked after I went through all this. There's one kid that I wanted to mention in particular that's kind of jacked. I don't know why he's late to the party. He must have been injured. The kid's name is their leading scorer is Aiden Hotchkiss. He's their leading points guy. Daniel McKernan is actually the leading scorer on the team. But the guy that just jumped back in the lineup, and he's down. He's only got 15 points. But if you notice where his 15 points come, excuse me, he's got 1.25 points a game. And so I looked at the other 2 guys. There's only 4 guys in the team that are above a point a game right now on the team. Hotchkiss is walking away with it with 1.51. That's a really good amount of games, amount of points per game. But in second place is this Hotchkiss. So I looked at Gavin Havens. I looked up Gavin and I said, I don't know much about Gavin. Let's see what he's about. He's only played in the last few weeks of the year here. So I don't know if he was injured. He's an 03. Maybe he was playing prep and he just doesn't show up on a prep team roster. But nice to see that they got a little bit of spark coming in at the end there. And I think that's made a big difference for him. You pick up a guy that's got 1.25, he's 15 games into the year, and he's 1.25 points a game. That's a huge little bonus for you to throw into the roster, So good for them, Good for Gavin. Keep it up, kid. I'd like to see you make a difference and help things there. So I don't have any affiliation with this team. I just like the way they look right now. So
if within the EHL, primarily USHL, NOL, like some of these other leagues, they'll either trade within their league, like the USHL will start making some trades to kind of beef up some of the teams that are already in the playoffs and then acquire assets that they can use to try to, rebuild. The NOL will get, some kids maybe from the NCDC that come over around playoff time. They may even get a USHL kid or 2 that, isn't going to be on the playoff roster. Is there any type of movement like that typically for the EHL league?
There is. I just don't know how much. I don't really follow their transaction page, but I'm going to see if they've actually got a transaction page while we're chatting here to see if I can answer that question. Because Game Center usually carries the transaction area. And so we've got standings, rosters, stat leaders, archive stats, transactions. Let's jump into transactions and see what their latest moves were. So let me pull that up so we can all share in this information. So there it is. We've got players being signed. It doesn't show, and a lot of the transactions don't show as actual,
like where they came from.
Right, to from. Different leagues do it differently, but there was a lot of movement. Today 3 moves. with players being signed. And and once again, I don't know this league as well as I know other leagues. You know as well as we do. We don't do a lot as far as we watch them this time of year because you want to see if there's any junior strength in anybody that might have the opportunity to go to the North American Hockey League. So yeah, I'll pull up a name, Aaron Catron. Just picking a name by random here. Oh, there's Gavin. I was looking at him a little second ago. Catron. If I throw Aaron in there, let's see what his action was here. So no, they just activated him. He might have been hurt or so. No, he's an NCDC guy. So he just came over from the NCDC. So nice. Interesting.
Very. Is he an O2?
He is a O2.
Yeah. So obviously for him, he's probably uncommitted, and I don't think the Junior Bruins are in the playoff hunt. They were kind of having a down year, so he's going to the EHL, going to be on a team that has the opportunity to continue to play, which gives colleges more time and the ability to see him in more critical situations.
Yep.
This is his opportunity to get committed, so that's good. I wasn't sure how the EHL, did things as far as acquiring talent to kind of make a push.
Yeah, they like every league, has that same mentality. I don't know if it's as strong as you see with the USHL, the NUL, with even the BCHL, AJHL. They all have a tendency of wanting to see the players succeed, and nobody wants to see a last year player without a commitment leave early, leave without getting playoff games in, and more exposure to move on. So it's good to see. I'm glad that the EHL and the NCDC, not that the NCDC had much say, because now that both those leagues are independent, they can both do what they want. They don't have a USA Hockey governing body to stop, thwart, or challenge a kid that leaves. They only have a financial commitment to whatever team they left in the NCDC. So still good for him. I hope he does really well. And but as we look at this list here, there's the whole month of February has been movement across the board. January, not as much movement, but still movement. And I hope all those work out. I hope all those kids are O2s that get a lot of time and get a lot of chances to shine. So I know there'll be a lot of Division III schools as they're wrapping up, and they're the teams that don't get in the playoffs in Division III. Those guys switch gears really quick, and not that we're talking about college hockey, but if you're out there and you're an O2 and your kid's an O2, keep in mind the way this works. They'll start talking to you. They'll want you to be interested in their program. They may even throw it on the table. Hey, we'd love you to commit to our team. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these Division III teams are still waiting for the mass number of NUL kids that are still hanging. What I mean by hanging is they might be talking to a D1 school. They might think they've got an opportunity with a D1 school. They don't know yet. They're holding out hope for a D1 commitment. But remember, there's a couple hundred kids that are going to be going to D3 hockey out of the NUL, and a lot of them, in fact, the vast majority of them, haven't announced yet. And why should they? They still have time to see if something comes their way, Division I wise. So there's going to be the NUL push first to get those kids, committed onto D3 teams. And a lot of those kids will be last minute, which means you could be in the process with a D3 team. I hate to say it, but it could take you into summer before all the rosters are finalized and opportunities open up. So if you don't have a Division III commitment and you're playing in the EHL, you're playing in the Premier, you're playing in the NA3HL, don't give up hope. Keep reaching out, keep all the lines of communication open. If you got a couple coaches talking to you, make sure you keep the lines open, because it's a longer process and a different process than D1, the way it works. So this is the time of year. A lot of D1's done, and they're looking just to fill a couple of spots. D3 teams could still have 4, 5, 6 commitments to make for their team that'll play immediately next year. So it could be a very long spring for some D3 guys. Don't worry about it though. Don't worry about it. That's the norm. I shouldn't say don't worry about it because you're gonna worry about it, but it is the norm. So that makes sense.
Good point. That's good advice.
Okay, we'll get to some of the questions. I see some questions popping up, but let's talk USHL. I mean, first of all, if anybody's got a question about the EHL, I'll try to answer it. Or you want my opinion? You want to throw your opinion up on the EHL? Please do. We'd love to hear what you think and compare notes on what you see going on with the EHL right now. I know that I had talked to one of the leaders in the EHL earlier today, and maybe he'll pop on too and give his 2 cents. That's not an invite to come on right now. I can only coordinate the two of us, man. These are all thumbs right now as far as what I do on these controls. So, but if you want to come on and comment, I'd love to see a comment on that. And I love this league. I always have. I think it's a good league, and I think it fits a niche. I think they're the first junior league when all this stuff started floating back, and now the separation came 10, 15 years ago where the USHL solidified into what it is now. The NAL fit into its niche really good right below them. And then we started seeing the NAL spread out and grow a little bit. And the tier threes were all trying to find their identity along with the NCDC. Now, the EHL, boom, they grabbed their identity. The NAL has their identity because of the way they're aligned with the NA3 has their identity because of the way they're aligned with the NAL. The USPHL and the NCDC are still struggling with that. They're still adding another division of the NCDC. They've got teams all over the place. And so I just like the EHL. Stayed compact. They haven't grown too much. They've grown, but they haven't grown too much. And they've really found their niche of guys that are, still going to play college hockey, but they found their lane, and that's not a bad thing at all.
It's actually a great thing because the colleges know where to look and the players know what they're going to get,
Yep,
for the most
right.
part when they play in that league. It's really, it streamlines the process from both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's talk a little USHL, man.
Yeah, this is fun. I think if you want to pull up their standings on your side, the league itself, depending on the team, they probably have about anywhere between 5 to 6, 7, 8 games left to kind of round out the regular season. But you'll see most of the teams have already kind of established themselves on who's in the playoffs and who's not. And that based on the different trades that have happened recently, where even some teams where it's like, man, they're only 4 points out of the last playoff spot, but they had moved their captain, they moved some of their top players. I think they knew that with the amount of games left, they just weren't going to get over that hump. And even if they did, they probably wouldn't have mounted much of a competition. So they already kind of, moved on and are focusing in on next year. But you can see here a little bit easier to kind of walk through where these teams are and whatnot because there's only 2 divisions. But the top 6 teams in both divisions are going to move on to the playoffs, and they'll kind of go from there. So I was just alluding to Muskegon has already moved on, quite a few of their top players and older players and whatnot to acquire some assets for the following year and whatnot. And, Omaha and some of the other teams have as well. They're pretty much at this point out of the playoffs. But, a couple things to look at. I know we had talked about this league maybe 3 or 4 podcasts ago, just like where things are kind of moving. And at that time, the National Team Development Program was actually first in the Eastern Conference at that point, and they've kind of reverted down the standings a little bit, even though they do have a couple games that they got to catch up to the rest of those 2 teams in front of them. But honestly, the way that some of the teams in this particular division, if you look at Youngstown, if you look at their past 10 games, they're 7-2-1. So they're really starting to come on. Some of these different teams have acquired new players, and it's really giving them an advantage, and they're kind of climbing the standings a little bit here in this last month. So honestly, there's a lot of really good choices. If somebody was going to say, hey, who's your pick to win it all? I bet there could be 3 or 4 different teams that somebody could pick, and it might actually pan out. But if we kind of go through, the way that you did, where we're looking at maybe goals for, goals against, when you look at the Fargo Force, they are currently the leader in points. But if you click on their team and you look at their starting goalie, Marinoff, the kid is an absolute stud. Just look at his stats when you find his name on how he's played so far this season.
I'm looking for Marinoff.
Yeah.
He's right here. I got him highlighted in yellow there.
Yeah. Click on him.
Oh, yeah, I don't have his stats, though. Highlighted him, but I didn't give you his stats. Holy smokes. That's not so bad.
He's 16-0. He hasn't lost a game yet this season. He's he's probably somebody that I would imagine gets drafted in this next year, but he's been good all season long. And obviously that's a huge difference maker for any team. But Fargo actually has really good forwards up front. They've got solid D, and then they got a studded net. So everybody knows the Chicago Steel have a lot of guys that are ridiculously talented. Macklin Celebrini is probably going to be the first player, in my opinion, drafted in next year's draft. Not this year, next year. He's only an 06. But
okay, so I just pulled up the
yeah, sorry to be bouncing around, but
Steel roster for
Matt
you.
Celebrini, he's number 17 on that list there.
Yep, got him.
He's leading the league right now in points, and he's a 2006 birth year. So, it's almost silly when you watch him play just how incredibly good he is. But right now I think I saw Craig Button had a way too early list of 2024 NHL draft picks, and they currently have him at number 8. I honestly think that by this point next year, everyone's going to be talking about this kid as the number 1 because he's just stupid talented. It's crazy. So, my point is the Steel have just this high power offense. He's not the only one on their team. The Harvey kid is really good. Like they're stacked offensively, but Fargo is just, they have some of that offense, but they also have the defense and they have the goaltending that I think when you look at like the 2 Titans here at the 2 number 1s, I just feel like they're going to win out.
You're juxtaposing the Fargo against Steel, so I jumped over to the Fargo roster. Does anybody in particular stand out to you that you wanted to pull up?
Well, the Owen Mullenbacher kid, he's a Detroit Red Wings draft pick. He came from Muskegon. He's somebody that is going to give them a shot in the arm. He's only played maybe a couple games with them so far. You got, one of our favorite players from last year that we were hoping that maybe we could get was Charlie Russell. And he ended up obviously playing in the USHL. Credit to him. We didn't even have the opportunity because of his ability, but he's just an honest player. He plays hard. He plays aggressive. He is willing to fight. And that's not something that normally happens in the USHL. So he's got a lot of bite to his game that you don't typically see. And again, when you get into the playoffs, that is what's going to be necessary and needed, even in a high skilled league like the USHL. If you have guys that have the ability to skate, make plays like Charlie does, but also play with that bite and snarl, that's tough to play against. So, he's a guy that I think is going to be a difference maker. If you want to look at like a Brad Marchand type, it's not the greatest comparison necessarily, but it's somebody that has enough talent to produce, but also, the grit to like be difficult to play against, and that's kind of how he plays.
Yeah, so you compare him to a Celebrini, 2 different types of players, and 2 different ways in. Charlie Russell, obviously did not start off in the USHL, where Celebrini, is cutting his teeth as a young man in the league, which is very nice to see. 03 versus an 06. But, Charlie took advantage of what he got. The door opened up a little bit to get in that league, and boom, he jumped in and started producing. That's really good to see. And I fully agree with you. I really like Celebrini, and I think he's going to be a difference maker. How much – it'll be interesting because the playoffs let me pull him up on here. Help me spell his last name. I always forget.
Celebrini or
Yeah,
which kid? It's
CEL.
Celebrini. He played for Shattuck last year, again as an 06 playing on their prep team.
Yep.
And he was their leading scorer. I mean, his stats for everywhere he's played are just like video game numbers.
Yeah. So what I wanted to look at is, he's got World Junior experience, and the 4 games there. I did not know what his points were. I was going to say, somewhere around 3 or 4 points, but there's his U17 numbers with the Canada Black. So that's important for the Steel. These guys that come in with this playoff experience, with the Worlds and any of these high level junior tournaments, the what do they call it now? 5 nations or 7 nations or 14 nations, whatever that one is. All of them. It's good to see. So, high level school he's going to. He's going to BU. Playing for a high level team. He's already played, at the world stage, and he came from a very good prep program. This is going to be a really interesting kid to watch. Played for the North Shore Winter Club. Didn't do so well in the Pee Wee Quebec, but we'll let that slide now as he's going on. See if there's any other notes on him here. Nothing big. So anyway, Celebrini, good kid, going to do good things. And what's your overall pick here, man? What do you think's going to happen in the USHL?
I'm thinking, and again, I hate to pick a front runner, but I just don't see how Fargo is going to get beaten in a series because they're just solid. I mean, they can put up the offense. They also have good defensemen, and then the goaltender is a difference maker. So, the reality is the Steel are so high octane and they play such an offensive game that if the Steel have the puck all the time, and can be scooting up and down the ice making plays, that's going to be hard for any team and any goalie to have to handle. But if Fargo plays a little bit heavier, a little bit more physical, it's going to take some of those players out of their game. And that's why I think over the course of the series, I think Fargo is going to win out in the end, even though they may not be able to put up as much offense, because I don't think they're going to need to.
Right.
And then,
Right.
If we wanted to look at maybe like a dark horse in this whole thing, one of the teams that I would highlight is Tri-City. And the reason why I say that is because recently they kind of stabilized their goaltender position, where earlier in the year that was kind of inconsistent. And, one of the players that they ended up kind of latching onto late here in the game was Cameron Corpy, who played in the North American League
Right.
for the Oklahoma City, who's first in the league right now. And, he was having a great year. I think he was number one or number two in goaltending stats. He just moved up. And then also the Burzins kid also has he was basically standing on his head for Danbury for most of the year. And if you look at that team stats, but then you look at his stats as a goalie, like he was really good. So now both of those guys are up into the USHL, and they're kind of helping that team play better in front of them. And that's where I think you might see a team come out of nowhere and make a run, because they got 2 new additions that is in the right position for what was holding that team back before. And it's not to, put down any of the goalies that they had there before, but it was just so inconsistent that it was hard for that team to ever really fully get going. And now I think both those guys are going to kind of stabilize that team and off their, I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said, they make a run. And plus their head coach that you always had as your elite prospects beginning, Anthony Noreen, like he's been in the league. They won the league. I think it was last year, right? Didn't they win the championship last year?
Yeah,
Or
I
maybe
believe
the year
so.
before?
I got to figure out how to
So
fix that. Got to get Noreen off of that.
that poor guy, he's on every single show we have.
Yeah. Probably not bad marketing for him, but maybe I got to charge him.
There you go. So that's kind of my dark horse. I think Tri City's got a chance to make some noise now, and kind of figure out who's the number one out of those two that they just brought in. over the next 5 to 6 to 7 games that they have,
Yep.
to finish out the regular season.
What I did while you were talking is I realized I did not change the titles for all the places we stream to. So that actually gave me a second to, while we're live, actually to change the titles to say playoff predictions. So that was actually nice. We got a little work done while we were sitting here. So you got any? I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm never going to bet against. I'm a little bit of a homer. I know the program well. I shouldn't say a homer because they're not my hometown team, but I have a favorite here. I'm going to pull the league back up here and discuss it from that end. Just give me the ability to pull up the standings here again.
One more down.
Yep, there we go.
There you go.
So, I really like and think you got to watch out for this team right here, Dubuque.
Yeah.
I think the two dark horses for me in this are Youngstown, Dubuque. I think they've both done a phenomenal job of, I think they're two. The Steel are always up there, but I think the two up and coming teams in the USHL right now are sitting right there. Always have consistent. Well, I shouldn't say always. Youngstown did not have consistent management, but in coaching, they've righted the ship, and I like them a lot. I like what they're doing. I like the way they play. Dubuque's just got they're solid. They're solid across the board in almost every aspect of the game. I just like them. I think they've gotten better in net, and I think that gives them a chance because they're upside down as far as goals against. I think they're running about a minus 15 for the year or something, but I think they're doing fine right now. They're 5-3, which puts them up in this as the third hottest team in that Eastern Conference. But look who your hot teams are. You got to take away the National Development Program, but your hot team is Youngstown. That's the next hottest team. So, and then the Green Bay Gamblers and Dubuque. So I really think that I like them a lot. I'm going to go down and when we're talking about the other division, I really think that we use that same philosophy that I talked about earlier. I know you just don't like to grab a front runner across the board, but Fargo is hard to score on. It's
right.
You throw that in the mix. As long as people can play playoff hockey when you get to that point of the year, and they don't succumb to the nerves or succumb to the pressure, because some of these kids, it's a young league. There's a lot of first year players in this league, and if they're playing in a prep school situation, super short season. Unless they were playing on a U18 team prior to prep starting that year. If they're playing in a high school situation, which some of the Minnesota kids are in that situation, super short season, and not only from times but games too. So even if you make the playoffs and make a run at states in Minnesota, it's a different world compared to getting 50 games in and then going into a battle to get out of the playoffs. So as long as the teams, the difference right now are that the kids that play battle tested as rookies. If those kids step up and stay consistent, that's why I think the Celebrini kid's going to do so well because that world stage, it's almost like playoffs are nothing once those kids get a taste of the world stage. You play with the bigger crowds and the bigger stands. It makes it a much of a difference. And a lot of times, and I don't know his complete story, and I can't remember what rinks I was watching on. Usually when I'm watching those younger guys, I make note of what size rink they're playing on. If they're playing in North America, and if they're playing in Europe, you're obviously playing on Olympic size ice, because that does make a difference too. So some of the bigger boys add a couple huffs up and down the ice when they've got to play on that Olympic ice, and it wears them out a little bit faster. I know it used to wear me out when I played. All right, Anything else, Mike, on that, or
Well,
should we jump on and see if we got any questions?
well, I was just going to say, when you look at the goals against for the Steel, I mean, they have to outscore their mistakes because they have one of the highest goals against in all
Yeah.
of the league, but yet they're first in the league.
Yep.
Whereas you look at Fargo, their goals for isn't far off from the Steel, but their goals against is significantly different. You're talking
Huge
about,
difference. Huge difference.
50 goal difference as far as how many they're keeping out of their net than the Steel are letting in. And the Steel just play a very offensive game. There's not a lot of D structure. There's more concepts that they play, and they want the puck and they want to go with it, which is fine. But you know, Fargo has one of the higher end offenses also. I mean, they're right next to the U.S. development program for where they're at from the offensive output as well. So again, I just think they're so well balanced that I'd be shocked if they didn't make it all the way through. But
Yeah.
anything can happen. That's what's so fun about playoff time is you come across the wrong team and you just match up just in the wrong way for your skill set, and it doesn't go your way.
And it's not really fair for us to be pounding the top so hard because, hey, literally 2 games this weekend, and Waterloo's tied for first with Fargo. It's
Right.
not like Fargo's that far in front. They've only got a 4-point cushion there, and
Right.
the Steel. If they slide a little bit, which right now they're just playing above 500 hockey right now in the last 10 games. If they keep sliding, I know they're 4-1, so their slump is they had a slump 5-6 games ago. But if they run into another little slump like that, holy smokes, you can see Green Bay, catch or pass them. Now, the fortunate thing is there's only a few games left. Chicago should be able to hang on, and Fargo, I shouldn't say fortunately because I don't really have a skin in the game between Green Bay and Chicago, and I really don't have
Right.
skin in the game between Waterloo and Green Bay catching them, or Chicago and Green Bay on the top, and then in the Eastern, and then in the Western, Fargo and Waterloo. But my only point is, there's still a lot of hockey to play yet, and we haven't crowned division championships yet, and either one of these conference championships are still up for grabs.
Yep, you're absolutely right. That's what makes this so fun because there might be some slots that change, from the teams that are going to make the playoffs, which then could, alter the matchup, that they're playing against. So it'll be fun to watch these kids play. And you made a really good point when you were talking about Celebrini. There's always that phrase that people use where big time players step up in big time games, but he's every bit that, where you give him a showcase or all eyes are on him, and that kid is so good that he's like it's kind of like what we saw with Bedard on the world stage. Like, that kid does not crumble under the spotlight; he rises above it. And
Right.
Celebrini is very much that same type of player. So it'll be nice to see if they do make a run, just because we get to see him play more.
Yep, I agree. Well, listen, it's going to be fun. Anytime you got a situation where right now in the Eastern Conference in the USHL, 39, 22 points. So right now, you can go all the way down to Cedar Rapids as far as, they're not out of it statistically yet uh, for the Eastern Conference. Now, it would take everybody above them collapsing, but points wise, there's still a shot, And I know a lot of pro leagues will actually do it, like give you what the scenarios are. We're not at that point. We don't have that sophistication here to give you. Well, this team has to lose 3 times, and this team's got to miss their bus, and the other team's got to forget to eat breakfast, and then they got a shot. But and then you go down and look at that Western Conference. Holy smokes! Once again, we said Waterloo's right on Fargo's heels, but Lincoln's is only 2 points behind Waterloo Blackhawks. So there's at least 3 teams that really have a shot. I mean, there's an outside shot for the rest of the teams there, maybe. But Fargo's got 11 games, or has got 1 game in hand on everybody behind them. So that extra game, they play that catch up game. Now they get to 60 points to the 54 of the team behind them. Now that it's really a little bit more difficult to catch them. They're still playing great hockey. They're 5-0-1 in their last 6 games. They've in their last 10 games, they're 8-1-1. You know, the team behind them is hot too, Waterloo, but the rest, they're all playing 500 hockey. So, you know, the Eastern Division, Chicago, Green Bay, Youngstown, Dubuque, none of those are playing 8-2 hockey right now. None of them are playing 9-1 hockey. So that's why that division seems to be a little bit more of a competitive division that's going to be fun to watch this play out, you know. A lot of experience with the Steel, though, being in the championship rounds. You know, a lot of good playoff experience for them. Not that there's not in other teams, but that's a battle-worn team when it comes to this. Let's see what we got on the board here. And I know I saw a couple questions up here. Well, Stephen just wanted to throw a comment up. He says J.P. Turner is a great player from Avon. So, yeah, we're aware of that. Yep, he's a good kid. Like watching him play. Here's an interesting question. Junie asks, is the NTDP still counted as part of the null? Not for, 8 years now? Has it been that long since they jumped over to the USHL? It's been quite a while, Junie. But you're right. Back when the null was 10, 11, 12 teams, and it was a smaller league, the National Development Program had their tongs in there, and it was really a good fit in the null. What's happened is the National Development Program literally became a national development program where they really were bringing in the best of the best, which took a while. That program has evolved. When that first started, you know, they went through a phase of we're just going to take big kids, and you'd see the whole national development program was 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", but they weren't necessarily the best skaters. They weren't necessarily always the best players. This is going back in the when they first started at 97, 98. I can't remember exactly what years you are. Don't fact check me on that. It was back in that range though. But they went about it a little bit differently, and then they also put a lot of emphasis on, you know, getting the second generation of NHL stars, their kids involved. Now that still happens, but I think there's a lot more legitimacy with the names that show up there. I know just as many NHLers with quality playing kids that are maybe still USHL bound or NOL bound or BCHL bound, but they have no shot of playing on the national development team because they really are separating and pulling the best of the best out. Now, there's always going to be an argument that there's a political situation somewhere on the roster. There's always going to be an argument that the coach favored somebody else, or there was money behind the scenes, or, you know, I don't know about that stuff. I don't believe that. I think that they've got a much better system now. That may have been the past, especially when they're first starting out. Too many people. It's like the movie Miracle. When they first started out, there was just too many hands in the cookie jar. And so, you know, when all these people have the ability to have a say and talk and influence coaches, and the coaches didn't have as much autonomous power, now that coach has a lot more to say about his team. That makes a huge difference with that national development program. So I know I went off a little bit on that. No, they're not part of the null anymore, nor should they be. They really are well suited where they're at. That doesn't mean that I don't believe that there should be a second regional national development program. I believe there should be 3 or 4 national development programs set up. You know, if the NHL is going to give us money, why wouldn't we be setting up centers of excellence? That the USA hockey system, you know, that was when they rolled out the ADM, and I know I'm going on a little bit of a story here, but when the ADM first rolled out, it was also rolled out with high performance hockey. It came out simultaneously. This ADM is going to be about long-term development, and it's going to have a faction of high performance development. The original high performance development model, some of you old schoolers can remember this, some of you might not remember this, but it was going to have pinnacles, and all talent was going to play regionally. There was going to be no USHL handling things the way they do now, where it was all from everywhere. The USHL was going to be, for example, Fargo might have been the Fargo area, but it was also going to include other areas, so it was their own pyramid, and they were going to change things a little bit. They were going to change it so that every region had a one team that you were all working up to, and that was going to be the regional development team, like our national development team is now, but it was all going to be regions. So if you're in Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, you were all going to play up onto one team. It might not have been a team in your backyard, but you were all going to be coming up on the one team. So it didn't happen that way. It didn't come out. I think the model right now is better, but if I were going to improve it, I would add a null component to that national development where they also have an opportunity to grow players. And I think that'd make a huge difference across the board. And it'd be fun to see. It'd be really fun to see how that worked out. So, hey, good question, Junie. Let's see what else is coming up here on the board. I saw. How many players are on a final roster? Jeremy asked. Mike, got that one?
I do. That's a familiar name, and I think I see from the picture it's a North Star Christian Academy jersey in there. So I believe this is coming from somebody that may play for Aberdeen. Yeah. So the final number, the final roster number is 23.
Yeah. So it's 23. This time of year, it's locked in. Trades are done. Player movement's done. There's a reserve affiliate component that comes into play now. Don't ask me the details on the what a team could do if they get in trouble as the playoffs come in after everything's locked. But 23, you could have an injured reserve player up in the stands that might be coming off an injury, but that would be an ad drop. You'd add him onto the roster and then drop the person you had filling in for him. So great question, Jeremy. Thanks. Appreciate it. Let's say hi to Andrew. Andrew's on. Andrew's also helping us out on our discussion board as a moderator. Appreciate it, Andrew. Good to see you. And then we've got, here's a question for us. Why does the U17 national team play in the NAL? Why doesn't it? Why does not? Yeah, why does not the national team play in the? Honestly, I think it's twofold, threefold. One is logistics. The USHL with the team being centered in Michigan, and the furthest east you got to go there is to the Phantoms, which is Ohio. Is it Pennsylvania or Ohio? It's right on the border in that area. I forget. Youngstown, Ohio. Yeah. So Youngstown sitting there, and then you've got your Midwest with your Iowas and those areas on the far west. It's an easier logistical pull. There is no natural place, or there is no natural division to throw them in if they play out of Michigan, because the East is everything from Johnstown, PA, and East, and you don't have any null teams in Michigan. You don't have any null teams until, where's the closest one going, south or west? It's a distance, so there's no natural fit for the null. Plus, the USHL is still the better league, and these are the best of the best. I think they fit in well. I don't really see, this is a personal opinion. This is purely opinion on this. I don't think that they would be a good fit in the null. I think the null could be more intimidating if they put them in the South, which tends to be the strongest division year in and year out. And logistically, it just doesn't fit anywhere else, in my opinion. Mike, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, isn't it the U18s play in the USHL and the U17s are in a different, or they kind of have like a split schedule?
Yeah, it has changed, and I might not be giving you the latest news on this, but what they've done in the past, because remember, when the Worlds come up and all these tournaments come up, the 18s are out the door, or the 17s are out the door to do world travel and do world games in some other countries. So they flip flop. Yeah, they flip flop back and forth on which teams play in that slot. So you notice they only have 36 games. If you look in years past, let's just go back to 21, 22, and we look and see where they're at. They're down here. They got the full complement, but there's years where they don't get the full complement like everybody else does. They won't get a full, like here they played. That's the pandemic here. I'm not doing a good job right now on explaining myself on this, but they don't always get the full complement of games in as the season ends. So I wouldn't really worry about them, which team does what, because they kind of use that slot to put whoever they want in to fit. Now, they don't do much of is splitting splitting the teams up and putting the best of the 17s and 18s. They stay as a core unit, but and they know ahead of time. It's not like the USHL goes, which team's showing up today? We're playing in but there's so much else going on with that national team uh, sentiment, that they get tied up on the world stage more, or even the North American stage more.
Yeah,
And
it's like they
we're all
both
playing
play in
college.
that USHL slot.
What's that? Say it again.
They both teams, the 18s and the 16, or I should say the 18s and the 17s, are both playing in the USHL, just not at the same time. They'll have it's not like they're mixing the 17s and the 18s together. The 18s will play for a period of time, and then the 17s will play for a period of time. And to your point, I think the 18s then move on and they're playing in the World Juniors, and they're sometimes playing in a college schedule and things like that. Like they're playing
Yeah,
University of Michigan, somebody else they have on their schedule.
yeah. So you look at the U18 team, and I'll throw this up here. Um, let's see if I can get into their schedule. So they're listed as an international junior team. They don't even put them down as a team that plays in the USHL. They're that's kind of their place marker to make sure that everything they're doing is held together. Maybe if I pull up a player, I can get into their schedule. But I know that both of these teams played a lot of NCAA games over the year this year. Yeah, I'm looking down here. This gives you an idea of just this season. One player and a goalie. Remember, goalies don't play every game, but you know this is all international play. This is what they've had to do just on the international scene. So the World Juniors. Oh, he's got the USHL. He got 2 USHL games in, and then he got 2 more international games, and they're full. They don't worry about them getting games. They're getting all their games in. I just didn't do a very good job of explaining that. So
Yeah, and it
anyway,
looks like the 2 games he's played in February were in those World Games.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, let's get one more on here. I'm excited about the 2 new teams in the NAL. Going to be very interesting. That's coming from Junie. Yeah, yeah, Mike. I'm liking it. It's going to make my world easier because they're putting a team back in Rochester. For those of you who don't know, Rochester had a team 99 2000, I think it was, 1 season. And the reason that they took the team back is the null. I want to say they took it back. It didn't work, and they were trying to fly the team to a lot of their away games. So they actually had a budget bigger than the AHL team that was in town for travel. Now think about that. The AHL plays 30 more games or whatever during the year. AJHL was had the ability to travel by bus much more than the Null team did at the time. And if you got to go to, back then they had Null teams in Michigan, so they were flying to Michigan. They weren't busing because the teams were, I believe, in Alpena at the time. Alpena, you don't drive there. That's a long drive from upstate New York. In Dallas, they were flying down there. It was a tough schedule. So yeah, this is second go around different because now there's an East Division, and yeah, they still might have a couple 7-8 hour trips, but I think it's feasible. I think it's doable. So my life's easier. I get a chance to have a team local, so I can get a much more in tune with our team in Texas because I can see the play here and I can get an idea. Okay, that's what that kid's doing in the league here. And it's just easier to triangulate players, and I'll also be able to see their scouts on the road and try to counter everything we're doing. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a good chess match.
I like the fact that they're both going into hockey markets also. So you've got a good, feeder program within that area of New York that team can capitalize on. And then the team going into Colorado, obviously Colorado's got great hockey there as well from a AAA and youth standpoint. So, it just gives those kids a lot more opportunity to not have to go quite as far if they don't choose to.
Right.
And like I said, there's already a hockey market there. So you would think from a fan base standpoint, there's already interest in that area that, hopefully will help that team and, create a good environment for all the teams as they go and play there.
So the question comes in right now: how much talent does the Null have exactly? That exactly word kind of throws me because it's hard to answer how much talent exactly. Let's put it in perspective of draft picks. Uh, you're going to see, on average, the Null will get 1 to 5 draft picks on every year, uh, and it's
NHL draft picks.
yeah NHL draft picks, and those draft picks tend to be, not always, but tend to be goalies. The Null has a really good reputation of putting out high-end goalies and goalies that move on to play, high-level college, Division I college, and move into the pro ranks, even into the NHL. We do. There's 2 leagues in the United States that have a better track record. Obviously, the USHL is the number 1 drafted league right now, and they put more NHL players out than any other league in North America. Uh, that's not even a dispute anymore. We went through this before on other shows. They put out 2-1 to the OHL, and that's a hard number to swallow for a lot of Canadians and a lot of fans of the OHL, which is a wonderful league. But the USHL, because of it's a small league, it has the national development program, and it still keeps your eligibility to play college, especially now that this NIL, the name, image, likeness deal is done, where players can be compensated. That compensation part makes a big, big difference in drawing super talent into the league, both American and Canadian. That league is number 1 as far as talent goes. The BCHL will get more NHL draft picks. I'm not ready to wave the white flag and say the BCHL is a better league than the NAL. As far as NCAA commitments, and remember, you got to do it on a per team basis, per team average basis, almost a per capita kind of thing, because you've got different size leagues. One league, the NAL, is much, much bigger. But if you still count overall, talent going on to play Division I college hockey, the NAL's right there. But the BCHL will get a couple more on average every year NHL draft picks than coming out of the NAL. What else do you see, Mike? Is there any other differences, or how would you assess the talent level exactly? Okay, it's got to be exact. Judy says exact.
I know that's tough because we need to have a better idea of what we're talking about. If it's NHL talent or if it's Division I talent. Um, I think we've talked about it before in the past, but I don't really think the North American League should be gauged off of NHL draft picks or talent because in many cases, if we develop a younger player,
They get
they're going to
snapped.
move on to the
Right.
USHL. And then they're going
They
to
get snapped.
continue on and they'll probably get drafted. And really, they're drafted out of the USHL rather than the North American League. We're kind of sandwiched in between tier 3 and tier 1, where our goal is, and it should be, Division I players. And there's
It
a
is.
rung of Division I teams that our players will go to. And it's not necessarily the Boston Universities and the Michigans and the Minnesotas and the North Dakotas and the Denvers, but it's going to be that next
Right.
level and then
Army,
down.
Air Force, Quinnipiac, your Mercyhursts, your Canisiuses, your RITs, those,
Maine,
right. You're going to see the
yeah,
smaller Division I schools. You're going to see,
Miami of Ohio,
yep.
all those
But your
programs.
majors, rarely do you see kids go to North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, uh, Boston College, BU, Providence. Most of those teams do not have a lot of null guys in the roster. In fact, they've got very few. Sometimes you'll see 1 or 2, and it doesn't mean the kids didn't start out, they didn't get a year in the null, but they swept up to the USHL really quick if they did play in the null. So
Well,
I
it's just like in our example when we were talking about the two goalies that, one from Danbury, one from Oklahoma City, that were playing fantastic hockey in the Null have now moved up to the USHL. The kid
Yep.
that played for Slovakia in the World Juniors that was playing for the Chippewa Steel, he's up into the USHL now. So obviously, if those players end up getting drafted this year, they're going to be drafted technically from the USHL, but
Right.
yet they got time, in some cases, a whole season in the North American League. They're just
Yep.
not topping out in the American League. So
Right.
if they did top out in the American League, they're going to go to Division One and one of those other, programs that we just talked about. But if they're truly studs that develop, they're going to end up in the USHL.
Yeah. So to kind of summarize what we're saying is, if we're looking just at Division One, you've got an argument between two leagues, and they're totally drastically different leagues. The USHL is number one. We don't have to worry about that. We're talking about two leagues battling for who's got the supreme level of talent. I don't think you can argue it that way, because the numbers, the vast majority of the numbers of players coming out of the NAL is much higher than the BCHL's numbers. And we've seen a slight decline of both Americans going up to the BCHL, and even though they claim to have set a record last year, I don't foresee that record staying the same way. I they advertised that they had a record amount of players that went NCAA Division One out of the BCHL. Great league, it's an unbelievably fun league to play in. You hear very little complaints. Maybe homesickness for some Americans, even Canadians from the East Coast. Maybe some kids get the grind of the travel, because the travel in that league is much harder than you would as a comparison to the NAL. The NAL, because they've got these regional pockets, is not so bad. Now this next year for the NAL, we'll wait and see, because that looks like it might add a couple real tough trips in there. So good question. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Okay, we'll let you handle this one, Mike. I'll read it. You answer it. Who do you contact for draft camp invites, coach or director of player development? Well, since there is no more directors of player development, according to Mike Bloom, go ahead, Mike. Answer that question.
Yeah, I think you can email both of them. I would, if you know, if both people are listed on the website, I would take both of those emails and just send one email to both people, and that will cover it. Some programs don't have, their scouting staff information listed, or if they do have a director of player personnel, so they might only have the two coaches listed or somebody. That's perfectly fine. The coach is going to end up, if they have a staff, shooting that over to them, to take a look at, to send out emails or to contact. So no matter what, everybody that you send it to is going to, do something with it.
Hey, Mike, just between the two of us, Frank might be fishing for an invitation there, so you might, not. We don't have to mention this on the air, but you might want to, send him an invitation.
If Frank wants to go to Hammond, Indiana, June 2nd through 4th.
Frank, if you want to go, you might want to be able to take my spot. I might give you my hotel room and let you go there. I got to figure out how to wear a snorkel with a filter on it. Is that fair to say about a place in the United States? Yes, it is fair to say that. So, all right, guys. Any other questions? We'll give you a second here. Mike, what do you got going on this week? What are you doing? I know you're busy trying to get the invites out to everybody for the pre-draft that's coming up, in the skate coming up in Hammond later in the spring here. But what do you got going besides that? You got some games up?
Yeah, I mean, we meaning all the Chicagoland area start the state tournament. So all the AAA teams are starting to play each other. They're actually playing each other through the week. They play like a best, I guess it's like a series kind of thing where they play each other, and it gets to who's going to be in the championship. So they do their home and homes and different things like that. So I'll be trying my hardest to work around my own practice and game schedule for the teams I coach to be able to get out there and see those games. But then we also have our state game on both the 16s and 18s play on Sunday. And that's one of those, ours is different at the AA level. You win and then you're into the round of 8, which turns into a round robin. If you lose, your season's over. So a lot of pressure on that one game just to get in. So we'll be practicing over the weekend to try to get our game in order to win on Sunday, and then the following weekend, that's when the round robin starts for our state. But like I said, so trying to scout as many games as I can and work around that for the games I coach.
I know there's 2 showcases going on. I believe, isn't there an NAPHL event in Detroit this weekend? Am I correct on that?
USPHL, yeah, I think so. You're right.
No, not
In
USPHL. I thought it was. I thought maybe I'm wrong.
NAPHL.
Yeah, NAP. I thought there was an event. If not, I know there's something going on in Detroit, a showcase. Maybe it is a USPHL showcase event. But I also know
No, it's NAPHL
that's what
event.
I originally said NAPHL, and I thought you said
Yes,
no.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, so there is an NAPHL event, showcase event.
Correct.
Is it at Troy? Where are they having it at?
It might be Ann Arbor.
Okay. I know that Ann Arbor held the last one. I was up there for that. So maybe
Yeah.
somebody else. Yep. Jeff comes in and says NAPHL playoffs. Jeff, what rink are they playing at? Are they in Troy? Or are they in Ann Arbor? Or maybe they're even down in, if it's not Troy, maybe they're playing
Trenton.
down. What's that?
Sometimes they'll play in Trenton.
Is it Trenton? Is that what they call that rink down there?
Yeah.
Just listed. Jeff says it's just listed as Detroit. So any one of us could be right on where it's being played at, because when they put generic
You're
Detroit
casting
down,
a wide net.
yeah, it's going to be one of those rinks. So you're either going to play where Bell Tire's playing, you're going to play where Oakland Junior Grizzlies play, or if they play out in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor doesn't have a AAA program, one of these Tier 1 elites out there, but it's not that far from Victory Honda. But it's a really nice facility, the ice cubes out there. So it would be one of those 3 places. I know that Blaine's got Tier 1 elite this weekend too. That'll be interesting to see. I am not going to anything this weekend. I'm going to watch some on TV and do some scouting, but I'm going to play a little catch up on getting my books back in order on all the players we've already seen. So sometimes it's better to focus on who we've already talked to and make sure to reconnect. And I'm doing a lot of reconnecting with players this weekend that I haven't talked to in a while, and make sure that I just check in with them. So that's what I'm doing in the scouting world. And folks, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for jumping on. I really appreciate it. I know Mike does too. You've been a phenomenal audience over the last couple of months here as we try to grow this. Don't forget, you can go to Junior Hockey Live is a YouTube page, or you can go to Junior Hockey Advisor. Either one of those or both, you can go like and subscribe and follow. We'd really appreciate that. We're trying to continue to grow our subscriberships on these YouTube channels. It's important to us to do that. And if you have questions, you can always DM us and let us know what you think about things. Give us, if it's a negative, send it to Mike. If it's a positive, send it to me. And that way we'll get it taken care of properly, and things will end up in the right in and out basket. So once again, thanks, Mike. Thanks for coming on. We had a great night with you.
Thanks, Jeff. I think this was fun. Now we get to see how it all plays out and which players that we talked about actually perform the way we thought they would.
I don't think we took much risk on any of our choices for who we wanted to win. Maybe I took one little tiny one, but out of all the teams we picked, I think we went with the easy odds-on favorites. I don't know. Is there a betting line? Have you ever? Is there anywhere in the United States where there's a betting line on the USHL?
I don't think so, but I'm sure you can bet on anything these days. I just don't know how legal it is.
Well, you're in Chicago. I'm sure there's 4 or 5.
We got bookies everywhere over
Yeah,
here.
4 or 5 places in your neighborhood you could go to put a bet on the game if you really wanted to.
Seriously.
Anyway, have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to jump on Monday night and to watch us talk about the process. Remember, we talk Wednesday about the teams, the coaches, the players, and the other show we talk about the process on how to get to the next level. All right, have a great night. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.